With the country gearing towards the construction of its first ever nuclear power plant from 2027, concerns have been rife about not only the financial implication that the groundbreaking project will have on the exchequer, but also whether we really need to go the nuclear way. On our season premiere, the Nuclear Power and Energy Agency Chair Ezra Odhiambo laid out the agency's roadmap, and on our second episode, NuPEA Chief Executive Officer Engineer Collins Juma lays out further the journey ahead for NuPEA, an agency on the front line of the realization of the nuclear dream. Hello and welcome to our interview with the Chief Executive Officer at the Nuclear Power and Energy Agency, acronymed NuPEA, Engineer Collins Juma. For the next half an hour or so, we'll be making heads and tails on matters nuclear technology. Thank you so much, Engineer, for making time for us and for hosting us as well at Kawi Complex. Let's say for the past 4 years, you were appointed to steer NuPEA in August 2017. That's, let's say, 4 years and a month from now or since. How will you describe those 4 years, Engineer?
Yeah, though I'm surprised you've read my appointment letter. You have the exact date. But the 4 years, I would say the 4 years have been well used, because I was not appointed from outside. I've been here for some time, and I knew what goes on around here in terms of the development of the nuclear power program. But I can say for the 4 years, what we've really put in place are the structures. That this was a new organization that didn't have structures. We didn't even have the HR instruments approved by SCAC, which we just got approved the other day because they take time. And also in the 4 years, we've tried to rationalize the staff because when we started, we didn't even have a clear cut on what each department is supposed to have in terms of their core values and their core tasks. Mm-hmm. And well, the 4 years again has also been push and pull on nuclear. I mean, especially the press has been hammering us. Some countries are pulling out. Why do you want to do this? So we also had to deal with that. But I'm sure some of that will come later in the interview.
Indeed.
Yeah. Mm.
Indeed. Someone will ask, what advised the need for the establishment of NuPEA? Of course, you've been around for a while, and the mantle was handed over to you by somebody else back then when NuPEA was being founded. But what actually advised the need for the establishment of this agency?
What advised the need is basically the document that we all know, the Vision 2030. And NuPEA is one of the Vision 2030 projects, flagship projects. Then how did Vision 2030 inform the formation of NuPEA? In Vision 2030, we know that Kenya aspires to be the middle-income economy country by the year 2030. That is to the leagues of Singapore and all that, and Malaysia. Mm-hmm. But now, what were the key projects that can propel us to that? And there were many. I'll not go into them. I'll only go to the enablers, because the enablers for those projects, energy was one of them. And I think in infrastructure. Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of energy, we've been over-reliant on hydropower until we were hit in 1996, 97, when the hydrology was bad and we had to do rationing. Mm-hmm. And then the government shifted focus to geothermal, because we have potential in the Rift Valley. Now, when Vision 2030 and the National Economic Social Council, in the office of the then Prime Minister, they looked at the sources and said, by the year 2030, assuming that all the hydro, which we can't expand more, and we pick all maybe the geothermal, and we have maybe coal. Coal was still under discussion. I think it's frozen somewhere in courts. Then will we have enough energy to run our Vision 2030 projects? And the answer was no. And there was a discussion that why don't we try nuclear, because nuclear has worked for the last 50 years plus, and it's a clean energy. The government bought the idea that come 2030 and beyond 2030, we'll need additional source, and it can only come from nuclear and probably coal or LNG. But coal now has its stories after, you remember, was it the Paris 2 conference? Yeah, basically that's what informed the formation of nuclear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been up and running for quite some time. Which would you single out as your key mandates, vision and mission as the Nuclear Power and Energy Agency?
Well, that has been brought out in our strategic plan, our mandate, and also it has been brought out in the Energy Act 2019. We have a long mandate. We even have additional mandate in terms of capacity building, apart from nuclear power development, capacity building, and R&D in the energy and petroleum sectors. But as you can see, our mandate is to provide sustainable energy solutions, and also provide, the mission is to provide, develop nuclear power, and also do capacity building and R&D in the energy sector for economic development. So what we are pushing is that we want clean energy and we want sustainable energy. Yeah.
Earlier you stated that you saw NuPEA and you actually played a role in the entire agency coming from scratch to having structures, and actually you singled out those as milestones for this particular agency. But what other milestones so far would you say that, yes, we've achieved and would be proud of?
Well, in terms of functionality, yes, that's what we've achieved. But in terms of core mandate, when we started this, nuclear is a totally different ballgame. It's not like a thermal power plant that you run the bids, receive back the bids, evaluate them, award, have a nuclear power plant being constructed. It doesn't work like that in the nuclear power plant. So when the committee was formed, the first approach was the International Atomic Energy Agency. Maybe you've heard about it. And that's the UN agency that guides member states. If you want peaceful use of nuclear technology, then they give you the guidelines on how to do it. And when I say peaceful use, I mean to generate power or to use it in agriculture, to use it in industry, but not to develop bombs and chemical weapons. So the agency, they gave the then committee what they call the milestone approach, where you do it step by step or in phases. First of all, you have to do your pre-feasibility study and look at what they call the infrastructure issues that you need to develop as a country. And then you check where you are with those, maybe some of them you already achieved, and then the ones you've not achieved, how far. So we came back. And that time, that was 2008. And the government was saying they want nuclear by 2020. So when we looked at that, we told them, hey, look, this is not possible, even in the year 2025. So, and they understood anyway, because this is the guideline from the agency mandated, and also from the best practice, because there are countries now that have done that. And we started with the pre-feasibility study, which we achieved, and then drew a roadmap. And then they have something called the mission, the peer review mission, inner mission. So after some time, picking what we did from the pre-feasibility study, we now started to work on those infrastructure issues, the 19 of them. And then in 2015, we called them for a peer review, and they evaluated where we were. I wouldn't say we were 80%, but we were somewhere maybe around 65%. And they gave us time that wherever areas that we had not performed very well, we tried to bridge the gap. And I think, was it early this year? Yeah, they came back for the second mission, and we've closed those gaps. So in terms of that, we've achieved that. The pre-feasibility study, we did the inner mission. We've now have a strategic plan, but we had also a previous strategic plan for 15 years. And there are some quick wins that those are work in progress, like training people, like publicity, what we are doing now. That one we've been doing through and we'll do it until we commission the plant and decommission the plant, because we have to keep on telling people what nuclear is, not only for us as a newcomer country, but even the countries that are already running nuclear power plants. Yeah.
We'll talk about the plant much later on,
Yeah.
and we'll have quite a discussion around it. But switching gears from the past to the present and to the future, in a nutshell, now what is your roadmap as a NuPEA, and is it achievable?
Yeah, we have a roadmap. We have a roadmap, a clearly defined roadmap, which is from right from when we started up to the year 2036 or 2040, when nuclear is supposed to come on the grid. And what we are saying is that we also don't work in isolation, because we have people under the Ministry of Energy who do power planning, and they tell you that in terms of least cost, this is the plan that we want maybe by the year 2017, 2018, 2020, and that's how the government does planning. So currently, in their simulation, we can only have nuclear by the year 2036 or after, and that is also good for us, because it takes a long time to develop these infrastructures. Actually, lead time is around 15 years on the minimum. So the roadmap is very clear to us what we are supposed to do, and I'll share it with you here up to the year 2036. Yeah.
Now, with your ultimate goal being part of the energy mix in the country by, let's say, year 2036, 2040, one would wonder, do we really need nuclear electricity? Keeping in mind as well, lately we have seen countries say enough is enough with nuclear energy, such as Germany, and they're going to other alternative sources of energy.
I don't know. I've heard that German story so much until I don't know. Even I saw an article, maybe you also saw it, whether they'll decommission their nuclear power plants next year, because next year is the target, and at what cost. But coming back to what you are saying is that I mentioned that the government under the Vision 2030 saw the need in terms of the numbers, not the rumors, the numbers that were there, that geothermal was at 18,000 megawatts, well, which actually they proved is even less the potential, and the government needed 28,000 megawatts at least by the year 2030, so where the other one was coming from, and it could only come from nuclear because we didn't have gas, maybe we could import gas. I think that answers the question of whether we need. Now, other countries and other sources, you've realized that throughout our discussion here, I've not mentioned wind or solar. And it is very intentional that nuclear or LNG or coal cannot be discussed in the same sentence with those other two. Why? Because we are talking of energy sources that the availability is around 38%, and we are talking of the ones which are maybe 98 or 99%. And what am I saying here? I'm saying if you want to do watch TV, light your rooms, and maybe do your garden light, solar is very good for you, and wind. And you forget about being industrialized, what we are talking about in the Vision 2030. But we are talking about baseload generation. That's why we are saying if we want baseload generation, then these are the sources. Yeah.
Again, Bwana CEO, how soon do we expect then a nuclear plant in the country?
As I've just mentioned, that the least cost power development plan, in their planning, they put nuclear at 2036. So we can only work with that and say, can we work now hard to achieve it by 2036? Yeah.
But a taxpayer watching would wonder, is this going to be a burden? Because setting up nuclear isn't just a walk in the park, a plant in this case. A taxpayer will wonder, is this going to be a burden, especially to my pocket? What will you tell Wanjiku who is watching?
What I would tell Wanjiku is that you really can't have your cake and eat it. If you are gearing the country towards a low electricity tariff, then you also have to invest. But I'm not sure whether it's Wanjiku who will invest directly, because we have to get a financing model for this. Eventually, it will end up with Wanjiku. But let's look at the end result. That what are we looking for? We are looking for an energy mix where the cost of power is maybe 1/8 of what we have now. Yeah.
On the flip side, for Wanjiku, is the construction of that plant now going to be of any developmental or economic benefit to them?
Well, how nuclear is developed, that you have to have a pre-project period, which is, I told you, the lead time is around 15. And that the government has to look for a way of doing it, whether it's through Wanjiku's money or through whatever means, but that has to be done. Then Wanjiku would only reap the benefits when the plant has been put and the cost of the power is reduced. Yeah. But having said that, it's not only the cost of power. We have the spin-offs in terms of R&D that the country should look at, whether you are Wanjiku or you are a non-Wanjiku. In terms of R&D, the spin-offs, like what Korea benefited, they started shipbuilding, they started motor vehicle manufacturing, because they have now the knowledge on how big industries run, and also they have the energy. Then you look at the employment opportunities that a nuclear power plant, assuming whatever your village, if it is put in that village, the spin-off in terms of employment of the people who will work in the nuclear power plant directly and indirectly, the spin-off of the supplies that will go into the nuclear power plant. I mean, if you try to quantify all that, then I think there should be some value for Wanjiku and non-Wanjiku.
Yeah. I'd like to us to shift our focus a little bit to something else. Yeah. And whenever nuclear technology is mentioned, security concerns arise. How guaranteed are we as a country that once this plant maybe it's up and running, we won't see nuclear accidents, like let's say the ones that happened Fukushima, 3 Mile? How guaranteed are we that maybe we won't see them here in the country?
I talked about the milestone approach from the International Atomic Energy Agency and the infrastructure issues. First of all, nuclear is self-regulating. Because for a technology of over 50 years with 3 accidents, at least you should even give them a gold medal for operating those plants in that manner. But coming back, not that we want accidents anyway, those 19 infrastructure issues that are given to member states are supposed to take care of all that. I said I didn't want to go into them because security is one of them, safety is one of them. And the vendors for these nuclear power plants also, they don't want to spoil their business, because nuclear is a big business, as you had said. And if we have a business that will always be having accidents and killing people, then I think they would close very soon. So they take care of that. So every accident, they learn from it. What happened in 3 Mile Island probably will not happen again. What happened in the Ukraine maybe will not happen again. I don't want to talk about Japan. That was a different case because that was tsunami. But they learn and improve the technology by every single day. That one in aviation and in nuclear, that is a must. And the safety is the priority. They talk of safety, 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 and security.
How else are the impacts of these 3 major accidents still relevant today, engineer?
I don't know their relevance today because, like 3 Mile Island, there was no casualty. The worst was the Ukraine, but that was a design problem. And I think that no one will ever build a nuclear power plant without a containment. Will never. So, well, that could be relevant today, that we know that they learned from that accident. The one for Fukushima, I won't say that was a nuclear accident, but it was that the people who designed the wall, I think, went back to maybe 150 years up to what the water had, the level that the water had spilled over, and Someone said that, I don't know whether it's true, that had they gone to 300 years, then they would have found that it had happened in Japan before, but they've learned their lesson. Yeah.
Now, let's face it, nuclear technology in the wrong hands could have very devastating results, and we have plans to have a plant in the country. How guaranteed are we that these plants will be safe from, let's say, external aggressors or terror cells?
Yeah, nuclear weapon in the wrong hands can have devastating. But nuclear power plant, unless because it's run by the government, unless the government is the government, which is the wrong hand. But if you talk of external, then I've talked of safety and security being major in the construction of a nuclear power plant. And maybe one day, if you have opportunity to visit one, it's like an army barrack. And security there, and they talk of defense in depth. First of all, you have the cameras, then you have the walls, then you have the people, then you have the containment. For you to pass through that and reach where you can cause harm, then I don't see it possible. I don't see. Well, it was tried almost in 9/11. I hear some of those planes were going to a nuclear power plant. And it's informed also the new design that even if a Boeing hits the current plants, nothing will happen. Yeah.
Nothing will happen. Away from the security concern is the environmental concern. How does nuclear science impact the environment? Keeping in mind we plan to have a plant, let's say, close to the Indian Ocean or Lake Victoria or Lake Turkana. How will the environment be impacted in this case?
I don't think there will be a negative impact on the environment. And in any case, nuclear power generation is one of those generations with zero emission. In terms of nuclear waste, if that's what we are talking about in terms of the environment, then nuclear waste management is one of the infrastructure issues that we talked about. And you have to, initially you keep them in the plant in casks. Then one day if you want maybe permanent repository, then you can do that. Maybe Finland has done that very well, and some countries are trying to copy from that. So the component of waste management is being handled. But in terms of environmental degradation, it has zero emissions. So in fact, some of the nuclear power plant, the people who live around, they even drink water around the nuclear power plant. Yeah, it's that safe. Yeah.
Do we have the capacity now for this nuclear waste management?
Now, no. But that's what we are doing. That's why we are developing the infrastructure. And that's why it takes 15 years. Because if we said that we want to build a nuclear power plant now, we'd be lying. We have to develop those infrastructures, and we have to put the policy in place, whether for waste management or emergency preparedness. And we hope by the year 2036, let me give you an example, by the way. There's a time someone asked that you as an organization, we can't collect garbage, which is true. But you see, we are aspiring to be the Malaysia of 2030 or Singapore. I think if we reach 2030 and we still can't deal with the garbage, then we are not Malaysia. Then it's not possible. But you see, Vision 2030 has an objective and a target. Yeah. So we look at it that way. So by the year 2030, we'll not be talking of, oh, can we handle this? Can we handle that? Yeah.
Switching gears again now to another issue of legislation, and this now sums our interview up. Do we have legislation that addresses nuclear power and the waste management as well?
Yes, we do. We just passed in 2019 the Nuclear Regulatory Bill, which is now an act, and we've established a regulator. And nuclear facilities are run through an independent regulator. What used to be Radiation Protection Board has taken that role. In terms of nuclear law, we are developing nuclear policy. And maybe in the next 2-3 years, working with the International Atomic Agency, we shall have finish those policies in terms of nuclear law. But in terms of regulation, in terms of waste management, that is covered under the Kenya Nuclear Regulatory Authority Act.
You're headed towards a very vital moment, a make or break moment, if I can say. These next few years are set to be very vital for the development of nuclear technology in the country. Aren't they, Engineer?
Yes, they are. The next 10 or so years are very vital. And they'll only be vital when we do what we are supposed to do. Because we also run on budgets. The government also has other projects that are of priority. The one you said Wanjiku wants to see very fast. So the government might not push so much for the development phase, and Wanjiku cannot get electricity or cannot get roads. So there has to be a balancing act. But the next 10 or so years are very vital.
With all eyes on how the government will navigate the tough balancing act ahead, we take a short break, but don't go too far, because when we come back, we have another exciting interview, this time with a queen in the Kenyan nuclear sector, a fun fact for you on nuclear energy, the My View segment, as well as the IAEA video of the day. See you on the other end of the break.